This 125-gallon aquarium was the worst in my fish room. Over the past weekend, I was able to turn this aquarium into one of my favorites. So let me take you along on the journey of how I completely transformed the worst aquarium in my fish room. This tank was once home to my Mbuna colony that featured both purple ACI and yellow labs. I recently moved these fish to a 180-gallon tank, which is much better suited for them. Unfortunately, due to a poor choice in substrates, this tank turned into the mulmy mess that you currently see. So the first order of business was to remove the water from this tank. I had an extra water pump laying around, which made draining the tank quite easy. So now that we have the tank drained, it's time to start removing the substrate. And this is where this tank failed. I thought that I could use a black sandblasting stand from Menards, but unfortunately it just clumped together. This made it difficult for nutrients to get to the bottom of the substrate, and also made it hard for plant roots to penetrate. One of my favorite tools for removing any substrate is this garden scoop that I found at my local hardware store. So I'm just going to go ahead and scoop the majority of the substrate out into a bucket. I did get most of it removed, but I'm going to leave some of it on the bottom to retain the nutrients that the tank already had. So let's start the process of putting this tank back together, and that starts with the substrate. I decided to go with pool filter sand, which I happened to also find at Menards. I've had good luck with this product in plenty of my other tanks, and it doesn't clump and allows plants to grow easily. The one thing, however, is we are going to need to wash the sand. So how I like to do this is to fill a bucket up with water and then add the sand. Doing it this way allows the sand to be rinsed as it's entering the bucket. I'll usually dump the bucket halfway through rinsing it out and let the water run into the bucket again until the water starts running out of the bucket clear. So now with our clean substrate, we're going to go ahead and take it back in the fish barn and add it into our tank. With all the substrate added, it's time to hook up the hose and start filling up the tank. Since filling the tank up will take a little bit of time, it's a great time to start cleaning the blackbeard algae off of the rocks. I just started with a bucket of water and scrubbed them off with a battery-powered cleaning tool that you can find at Amazon or your local grocery store. This tool has become one of my favorite cleaning tools that I keep in my fish room. One of the other tasks that I undertook was working on cleaning out the sump. If you look closely, you can see quite a few yellow lab fry swimming amongst the mulm that had collected in the sump. These fish had been taken over the overflow and sucked into the sump, where they grew up eating organisms that lived in the mulm on the bottom. I did have quite a few fish down there, which I was quite happy about. This tank did suffer a fairly large amount of losses during a recent power outage. Some of the fish were large enough that I could even add them back to the main colony. I ended up putting the smaller fish into a 20-gallon grow-out tank to grow out until they were large enough to be added back to the main colony. Now that I have the tank filled up, you can see that it's still pretty cloudy, even though we washed the sand. I went ahead and started adding the filtration, which was this Tidal 75 filter. I wanted to add a couple of large aquarium co-op sponge filters as well, so I headed down to Fishy Biz Aquatics, who is an aquarium co-op retail partner, and picked up a couple of large sponge filters. Once I got home, I went ahead and assembled them and installed them in each corner of the tank. For large tanks like this, I really like the flow that they put out, especially when the Easy Flow kit's attached to the sponge filter. At this point, I left the tank overnight and let the filters work to clear out the water. Now it's the next day and the tank looks a lot better. I had decided that I wanted to put Crips in the tank, and there happened to be a local swap going on that day. And as you can see, there were plenty of Crips to be had, and I came home with quite a haul. I went ahead and started pulling them apart, and as you can see, I had quite a few plants to work with. I didn't end up using all of these plants, so I went ahead and put them in another tank for storage until it's time for the next project. I then went ahead and started planting the tank, leaving plenty of space for the Crips to grow out and spread. Hopefully here in the near future, we'll have a pretty nice Crip garden going in this tank. So now we get to the fun part, and that's adding the fish. I decided to give my Tropheus maplungu a new home and to move them out of their current 75-gallon tank. Despite some of the losses during the recent power outage, these fish have been some of my best breeding Tropheus, and I'm really excited to give them an upgraded living quarters. I did have to remove the rockwork and Vallisneria, but catching the Tropheus was not too difficult. And here you can see me adding them into the tank. So here are a couple clips of the finished product. I'm really happy with how this tank turned out. The lighter colored sand really makes this tank a lot brighter, and I really enjoy the space that the trophies have to school around the tank. Hopefully at some point, we'll have a tank full of Tropheus and a tank full of Crips. I'll keep you updated on how it turns out. I hope that you enjoyed coming along with me as I fixed the worst tank in my fish room. At the end, I'll go ahead and put a link to a video explaining what happened during the power outage, as well as a tour of Fishy Biz Aquatics, showing what that fish store has to offer as well. So with that, stay safe, stay fishy, and I'll catch you on the next video.